Hello, hello. Is that Mickey? Thanks for joining. I hope the family's doing well. All right. I should be really comfortable, but I'm not. I do lives for church all the time. I'm behind the scenes though, so I'm not on the camera. It's different. I miss you guys. I'm gonna try to wait a couple more minutes. Um, and then I'm gonna jump in because time is precious. Right. How's everybody feeling on the West Coast? Y'all been well? This COVID has been something, so, but we're still here. We're still making it. Love you. Well, all right. 7:01. Ready to get started. So I just finished Instagram. And yeah, it's going live is something. All right. Well, let's get started. Thank you guys for joining me tonight. My name is Anjanika Brooks, and I'm here to talk about my new book, Unmothered, A Daughter's Guide to Acceptance, Healing, and Renewal. So, here's the book. Not sure if you can see it better. The proof came in the mail yesterday, and I'm so excited because I wasn't sure if I would have it in time, but it's here, and it's gonna help me get started with cells and everything. So, proof came in the mail. Hey, family! Thank you guys for joining. All right, so a little bit about the story and why I wrote this book. So, I grew up in the South, in North Carolina, and I grew up well. I had my mother, my grandmother's sister, my aunt, she lived with us. I grew up in a house full of women. And it's not something to brag about. My father was absent, but, we were raised well. However, with growing up like that, with my grandmother and my mother was young. She was very young. And so, she didn't know some things. And I think sometimes when you're not quite prepared to be a mother, it catches you off guard, and you maybe don't even have the chance to decide if that's what you want to be. But at any rate, that's how I grew up, and it wasn't until later when my mom became ill with breast cancer, and then I actually lost her to cancer, that this whole story began to come out. And so I never thought I would write a memoir, but the reason I ended up writing it is because I suffered so much grief just going through breast cancer treatments and eventually losing her, that I felt God just tugging on my heart and saying, you need to write the story. You need to share it because there are other people out there. So what I thought the story was going to be, what I thought the book was going to be about, was about grief. Was about when you lose, someone you love to cancer, to that terrible disease. Just what do you do? How do you deal with that? That's what I thought this book was going to be about. However, when I started writing the book, I had to do a lot of research. And so in the research that I did, I found that there were a lot of women that were struggling with their relationships with their mother. And I had had that similar struggle. And so it wasn't until I was in the middle of it that I realized the book wasn't really going to be just focused on grief and what happens when you lose someone to cancer and what that whole journey is like. But it was really more so that I lost her before cancer. I never really had the mother that I wanted and that I needed. And it's truly important, especially for a woman, that you have your mother. So that is sort of how I got to the point where the book changed from being just about grief and seeing a loved one through cancer to Unmothered and what that really means and why it's important to talk about that. So let's talk about it. So mothers deserve our love, our support. They sometimes are seen as the backbone of a society. However, with as much as mothers have to carry on their shoulders and with as big of a job as they have to do, sometimes mothers aren't prepared or they just aren't ready and they don't do it well. And so when they don't do it well, children suffer. Children bear the brunt of them not knowing how to mother. And so the book isn't meant to go after anybody, to attack anybody. It's not meant to, to put anybody down and to say, everybody should be perfect. What it's meant to do is to shine a light on something that's been going on in our society, really in our world, for a long time. So mothers, they're special, they're sacred. But when they're wrong, who can check them? It seems like nobody, but we have to talk about it. And why do we need to talk about it? Because of the daughters that come after them, because of some of the things that we take from them and then continue to carry forward. And that's what I look at as sort of generational curses. Some of the baggage, some of the issues, some of the problems, we get that handed down to us and we carry it forward. So I believe that one of the reasons that I was told to write the book is because we need to address it and it needs to stop. It needs to stop. We can no longer pretend that, mothers are beyond reproach, because they are so important to our society and because they are so important in the home, just like fathers are. Because they're important, we need to figure out a way to do better. So, Unmothered is focused on daughters. It's focused on daughters because obviously I'm a daughter and it's my story. As much as we would love to, get people to change and, have people to see the light when we're trying to tell them, something that they need to learn or need to listen to, that's not reality. And so in reality, you can really only take care of yourself and you can really only handle your own actions. You can instruct somebody, you can tell them what to do, but you can't make them do anything. So you can't make someone change. But because you have power over yourself, that is why I address what daughters need to do to heal, instead of kind of trying to talk to mothers and tell them how to be. So I'm in various support groups. Like I said, I was doing research for this book, and I'm in grief support groups. I've seen what it's like to talk to motherless daughters. I am in groups where it's just only grief. And I'm in groups where there are relationships between mothers and daughters and they're working on it. But I'm also in groups where it's mostly focused on toxic mothers, daughters of toxic mothers, and how they deal. And some of the things that are happening are amazing. And it transcends race. It doesn't matter what color you are. It doesn't matter where you live. And then the very surprising thing is that it doesn't matter what age the moms are. So it looks like they're not learning and they're not changing. They're going through life, and even though they may not know how to take care of a child, maybe sometimes they're verbally abusing them. Sometimes it can even be physical. Sometimes it's just belittling them enough to where it stifles their growth and they just don't feel loved. But it doesn't seem to change even when they're in their 80s for some of these women. They're still, treating their 60-year-old daughters very badly. And so, like I said, it gets carried forward, and we need to talk about some ways that we can heal. And so that's where the book came from. And, it was a surprise to me, just like it probably was to a lot of my family and to a lot of people that would see a book like this on the shelf and say, well, why is she, putting down mothers? I'm not. What I'm really here to do is try to lift us all up. And I think that's what we need to do. And it's not because I'm perfect. I'm trying to give the steps back the way God gave them to me. Because going through what I went through with my mom, I wouldn't wish it on anybody. And I do know that there's so many different circumstances. We don't have to compare whose situation is worse. There are a lot of different circumstances out there, but I don't think that this is ideal for any child to not be able to have their mother there when they need them emotionally, when they need them for support, just when they need their mom. So that's why we're going to try to change it. So what I want to do is talk a little bit about what the traits are, because I talk about toxic mothers and I talk about narcissistic mothers, and sometimes it's hard to tell what that really means. Well, toxic is probably the easiest one, because if someone's doing something that's negative or saying something that's bad, and that's what they're teaching you, you sort of know inside that that's wrong. But narcissistic is such a it's a strange term, but what it really means is a person that's very self-centered. They really don't take care of the daughter or the child like they should. If something's going on with them, they put themselves first. When really, as a mother, those of us that are mothers, even aunties, sisters, we know when it comes to a child, you have to put them first. So in being narcissistic, that is a really difficult thing for them to do, and it's just something that's in them. Now, I'm not a psychologist. I don't have any mental health degrees, but I am concerned about mental health. I think that is very important. And so a lot of the problems that, we've experienced as a society, as a culture, they've started long ago. And, when we didn't know about therapy, or when therapy wasn't okay, it wasn't cool. And it's still really not cool. But now we have so many tools available to us. And so I'd like to see us start to use them and start to heal. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read you a little excerpt from Unmothered. And this is a story that it kind of tickles me, because I'm healed. I'm much better now. But at the time, it was sort of like the first way I realized that there was something strange going on with my mother, and that she wasn't maybe in the place that she needed to be to take care of us, or at least to take care of me like I wanted her to. So I've shared the story on some of my social media, but I'm going to read it how I wrote it in the book, so you can kind of get an idea of some of the characteristics of narcissism and what was going on in my house. So let me set the stage for you. So, like I said, in my house, there's my grandmother. She's the head of the household, no question, the heavy, but also led with a whole lot of love. Who didn't love mama? Everybody. So, and then, she had her sister there with us. And then there was my sister, my cousins, house full of women. And so it was a very loving environment, for the most part. But there were some issues. And so this story takes place around Christmas time. Though my dad wasn't in the house, he was an absent father, he would sometimes send money for Christmas. So we had a little Christmas money, and we were kids. My I think my sister was 8. I was maybe 10, 12. I'm not sure. But anyway, we had gone Christmas shopping for the household. And so here's where the story picks up. Christmas Day rolled around, and things were going swell. Music was playing, and everyone was having a good time until Puddin', that's my mother, that's what we called her, opened her present that we got her. She gasped, and I knew what was coming. It was like someone pushed a needle off a record. "What is this?" she asked. I looked up and saw her eyebrows knitted in confusion, while turning the gift every which way, trying to figure it out. "Is this an ornament?" she continued. Honestly, I didn't know what it was. It was a present, was all I could think. "We thought it was cute," I said. She was visibly upset and took the present and stomped off to her room. I felt bad. It was Christmas, and she was upset because we didn't get her a good gift. So I kept playing with toys and hoping she was going to come out of her room. After a while, I realized she wasn't coming back, and I went to check on her. The door was cracked, and I saw her looking dejected and teary-eyed. Seeing her grown woman tears made me hot. I couldn't believe that she would cry because we didn't get her what she wanted. "Are you crying?" I asked. I felt like my hand was on my hip. "Yes, I'm crying," she said. "Why?" I asked. "Because you didn't like your gift?" She didn't answer. I asked her where it was. "That rat is in the drawer," she said, gesturing to the dresser. I asked to see it. Of course, it was packaged when we bought it, but I mostly wanted to know if I messed up and if it truly was an ornament. She went to the drawer and pulled it out of the very back of the dresser where she had stuffed it down, further than probably a real mouse could go. She handed it to me. I inspected it and found that it was cheaply made, not quite so cute after all, and on the very top of its little hat there was a thin gold string. It was an ornament. But I was still mad, and I told her she shouldn't be crying. "But it's an ornament," she wailed. "Y'all gave me a rat for Christmas." "It's a gift," I said. "It's a thought that counts. You don't see Mama getting upset and crying over what we gave her, do you?" "But it's a rat," Puddin' hollered. "We are children," I hollered back. "We don't even have a lot of money. You need to know just how to be thankful for things." Even though I was only 10 or 12 at the time, I had sense enough to know her behavior was wrong, as my research shows many daughters of toxic or narcissistic mothers do. Mama was always going around the house basically preaching to all of us about how we had to act. I had lots of Mama's old school lessons in my head, but I guess Puddin' hadn't learned any of them because she was, a grown woman, falling out over a present. Normally a child wouldn't dare speak to her mother in the way I spoke to mine. But then again, around that time, we interacted more like sisters than mother-daughter, so sometimes the lines got blurred. I walked away and left her in her room, but the tone was set. From that Christmas, and every birthday, and every Mother's Day on, it didn't matter whether we had a lot of money or not. Whatever we had went into getting Puddin' a nice enough gift so she didn't have to pout, cry, and bring drama on us for not getting what she wanted. She never contributed to us having any money throughout the year, but Mama would give us small amounts, and we'd save up our birthday money and any gift money to make sure we could shop for Puddin' on holidays. So, just a little excerpt, just so you get an idea of, some of the turmoil that goes on inside when you don't quite know your role as a mother, or you're not maybe ready to step into it. And like I said, my mother was young, and I understand it, and I love her. I still do. I took care of her. But at the same time, we need to know what's right, and we need to try to learn, the lessons that are there for us to learn. So, in the book, it's not bashing, it's healing. And so I lay out the 9 steps to healing, so that if you are a daughter who has a toxic mother or a narcissistic mother or an imperfect mother or whatever it is, and you know that your relationship is not what it should be, it's not for you to, hang it over her head that, you're not right or you're not perfect. It's really for you to take up your own journey and begin to heal. And through doing that, you can put forward the right things for the generation that's coming, or for your family if you choose to have one. So that's what I want to talk about next, is what are the 9 steps that I cover in the book to help us, move through the healing phase. Now, I'm not an expert, like I said, I just basically live this. This is my life. And so the steps that I have here are the steps as I feel like God relayed them to me. I didn't even know what was going on. I thought I was writing about grief until I started doing the research, until I realized I wasn't healing myself. And then, the answer came that, this isn't grief. This is about not having the mother that you wanted and that you needed. And how that, affected you. So let's get into what the 9 steps are. And I see a couple people have joined. Thank you for joining. Glad to have you here. So the book is broken down into 3 sections. And the sections are acceptance, healing, and renewal. So let's talk about acceptance. Well, it's just sort of like anything else. Before you can begin to fix the problem, you got to admit what the problem is. And so you have to acknowledge, that if there's something that you think is going on with your mother, or if there's, something wrong with that relationship, it doesn't seem quite right, you have to acknowledge that. You just need to be real about it. And then in acknowledging that, there may be some problems there, you have to understand that those problems can cause trauma. So you have to acknowledge that maybe something happened between you guys. Maybe something is ongoing and you didn't heal. You didn't get over it, because we're human. And although the world tells us, yeah, you're too sensitive, or oh, you shouldn't be thinking like that, we are human. We're flesh and blood, and we hurt. And sometimes we hurt deeply. And because we hurt deeply, we have to process that. And so that's what I call acknowledging the trauma. Acknowledging the fact that when something happens to you, you may not be able just to throw it out the window and say, okay, that's over, I'm fine. You may, it may stick with you. It may be a sore point. And so that's the first part of acceptance, is acknowledging the problem and the trauma. The second step is realizing that hurt people hurt people. And so because of that, you need to know what happened to your mother. What is her background? I know you may feel like, well, what does that matter? Just because something happened to you doesn't mean that you should treat someone else, badly. However, you need to understand what happened, because you need to develop some kind of empathy for whatever she went through. It could have been that it was her mother. It could have been another family member. It could have been, who knows, a relationship. Anything could have happened. And you need to know her story so that you don't end up repeating it. And if you do that, then you're just going to keep carrying it forward. So it's important to know what your mother went through. It's important to know how she got to be the person that she is, what happened, and to develop that empathy so that you can understand her place. It doesn't mean that you will throw out your feelings and how whatever she's done to hurt you. It just means that you empathize with her as another human being, that something may have happened that, set her up on this course. So after you acknowledge and after you learn the backstory, you need to accept her for who she is. And I call this chapter Mask Off. Maya Angelou has a quote, and it says, when people show you who they are, believe them. So many of us want to change our mother. And I've been there. We want to change our mother. We want her to be this. We want her to be that. And there's so many good moms out there, and I'm not knocking anybody that has a good mom. But those of us with the challenging moms, we see the other moms, and, we see what's going on. And I had my grandmother. And we want to change the mother that we have sometimes. We wish she could be a certain way. But we're not able to do that. You can't change anyone but yourself. And so because of that, you have to accept your mom for who she is. You can hope going forward that if you have a conversation with her, or if you're going to talk about therapy or whatever it is, that she can accept that and, use it, but you can't change it. All right, so now that we're done with this acceptance, the next section of the book is healing. And healing is two parts. One part is grief, and the other part is forgiveness. So let's talk about grief. So grief has some facets to it. It's not just, when you lose someone. The first reason that I was kind of stuck grieving for my mother was because I didn't have the mother-daughter relationship that I thought I was going to have. I thought we were going to be so close. I thought we were going to be best friends, be able to do all these things together. And even before she got sick, we didn't have that relationship that I thought we were going to have. And I didn't realize it until after she was gone. And it hurt so bad, and I couldn't get the time back. So I'm encouraging women in the book to grieve the relationship. Yes, your mother may still be here with you. She may be on this earth. But if you don't have a relationship that you think you should have, you need to come to terms with that and understand that maybe she brought you into this world, but she might not be the nurturer for you. So after you grieve the relationship, you need to also grieve her lost potential. Now, this doesn't mean all moms, but in my mother's case, she was extremely talented, smart, could learn anything. She could sing, she could write, she even did a little bit of photography, which is where I think my sister gets it. So I felt like she could do anything, but she was accepting of circumstances that she didn't have to. And so I wanted so much more for her. And she never, got to do any of it. She didn't get to develop into who I thought she could have been, who am I to choose? But she didn't get to develop into that person, although she had a tremendous amount of potential to do so. And so I had to grieve that loss. And then the last part of grieving is death. I lost my mom. But in some of the support groups that I'm in, the question comes up all the time. The women are treated so badly that they ask this question: if your mother died today, would you grieve? It's a heartbreaking thing to ask because some of them feel like they're going to be better off. They might be better off, if they don't have the treatment that they're having right now in their home. And the reason they're thinking this is because, you might reach out to family, you might try to tell somebody, but you'll get the answer, well, that's your mother. Well, you need to be respectful. Well, you should do this, and they kind of turn a blind eye to it. And it keeps the daughters in the situation to the point where they begin to wonder how they really feel about the mother. So in the book, I encourage women to think about it. Think about it, because if you were ever blindsided by a tragedy such as losing your mom, for any reason, I don't care what your relationship is with her, it's going to hit you. It's going to hit you, and you need to be prepared for that. And so I just encourage thinking about it, talking about it, kind of just, go there on the subject, just so that it's a possibility, because tomorrow isn't always promised. So after grieving, there is forgiveness. Forgiveness is controversial, because a lot of people feel like, well, why should I forgive? I don't have to forgive you for anything that you did, because you knew, how to act. You should have known. And why should I be willing to let you off the hook? But forgiveness isn't letting someone else off the hook. And I explain it. Forgiveness, it is up to you, and it's between you and God, actually. And it is a way, if you choose forgiveness, it is a way to move forward. It is a way to work in your full power, because you can then let go of other things that may be holding you back. You can let go of, like reliving the pain every time you think about this that was done to you. But it is an individual choice. And so I talk about that in the book. The second part of forgiveness, which is the really hard part, is forgiving yourself. Forgiving me. So being unmothered comes at a cost. And for me, my teenage years were really, really difficult. And just like I shared that story with you earlier, there are a lot of stories, layered throughout the book to kind of bring some of these points. But forgiving yourself is key because you can't really move forward if you're holding yourself hostage and, beating yourself up about decisions you made when you didn't know any better, decisions you made when you were trying to raise yourself, things you did when you did know better, um, all of that. You have to get to a place where you let it go so that you can grow. And so that's what that chapter is about. So after we move through acceptance and after we've gone through healing, and both of these take a lot of work, we will finally reach the last step, which is renewal. It's the last section and it's the last step. Step number 9. And renewal is basically you living. You get to live. You are not your mother, you're not your father, you're not your aunt, anybody else. You're you. And so you get to decide if you're going to have a different life. You get to decide if you're going to take the lessons that you learned and if you're going to be different than what you saw. You're still here. You are still here. And so you have yet another chance to be whoever it is that you're meant to be. And so you can set goals to get to where you want to go. You can use your own mind and think differently. It doesn't matter what you were taught. You get to make a decision because it's your life. And you also get to basically, I say, open yourself up and just submit to whatever your calling is and walk in your purpose. Because when we go through things, adversity, and when we go through things like, in my case, having a mother that wasn't really there, wasn't really capable of being there, and then losing her, we might say, well, I'm going to be this, I'm going to do that, despite whatever the circumstances were. But I look at it as you're going to do and you're going to be whoever you're going to be because of what you went through. Not that it's a badge of honor, but because you are now made stronger through the suffering, through the mistakes, you know more, you still have grace on you. And so because of what you went through, you're going to now be able to step into your purpose. You're going to now be able to teach the next generation. You're going to now be able to lead with love, do things differently. And so that's what renewal is all about. So, in a nutshell, and about 30 minutes, that is my book, Unmothered, A Daughter's Guide to Acceptance, Healing, and Renewal. So does anybody have any questions that I can ask or answer, for you? I see some people in the chat here. Thank you guys for your encouragement and your love. Thank you. I don't know. It's hard to run from God. I know we're not all in the same walk and we don't all believe the same thing spiritually. I get that. But for me, I ran a long time. But it is really hard to run from him. And when you feel like God places something on your heart and you want to help somebody else, sometimes it takes putting yourself out there. And so I know this is not going to be the prettiest story. It's not going to be the best. And I love my mother, still love her with all my heart. However, sometimes you need to say some things, and sometimes you need to change some things. And I think that this is where we need to be going as a world. We need to start healing, and we need to start looking out for each other. No more turning a blind eye. If we're going to rise, then we're going to rise together. We can't rise and point fingers. We can't rise and act like we don't see things. If we're going to change, and especially as a culture, if we're going to change, then we're going to have to do it together. And we're going to have to do that internal hard work, that healing, and then we're going to move forward. And we're going to move forward in power and in purpose. And that's what I believe, and that's what God put on my heart. So this book is out here. I don't know what else is coming. I always say poetry because that's one of my things. But whatever God gives me, that's what I'm gonna give back. So I'm looking in the chat. I don't really see any questions in here, but I see a lot of love. So I just thank you guys for joining me. Um, if you do have questions, oh, I know I did have some questions about the book. So I have to go through the whole book and actually do final edits and get it back to the distributor, because this is the proof copy. And that's the reason that I haven't put out a sales link and all that, because I don't want to say a date and that's not the right date because they're still, printing or making changes or whatever. And it is self-published, but I used the book coach to do this book just because I wanted to make sure I put my best foot forward, and because I was actually stuck in the process, and a lot of what she taught me helped with the research that was needed. But I'm still learning, and this is my life's work right now and my dream, and so I just thank God, give him all the glory for where I am right now. So sales links will be coming once I get everything edited and get a date back from the distributor. And I just thank you guys for your support. Thank you for joining. And if you need me or have any questions, you can PM me on Facebook or DM me on Instagram or call me, or just get in touch with me. I'll have my website's going to be updated too, so I'll have all that information for you guys coming soon. So thank you guys. I hope you enjoy your night.